privilege it is for us all now to hear from one of the key figures in our industry today, the lead for Hyatt acquisitions and development across Europe, the Middle East and Africa. Felicity, welcome.
Thank you.
It's been a very busy and exciting time for Hyatt. We've seen the announcement from Playa this morning. And since 2017, I think roughly the point you joined the organisation, Hyatt's expanded its global portfolio by a whopping nearly 90% to over 1,350 properties. And in the same period, in your neck of the woods, Europe, room count has tripled. So there's a lot to talk about, and I do want to give you the chance to ask some questions. So let's crack on. First, I'd like to ask about the balance of leisure and business across Hyatt's portfolio. Traditionally, I think you'd agree Hyatt's felt comfortable servicing the high-end business traveller. But over recent years, you acquired Apple Leisure Group in 2021, which transformed the exposure of Hyatt to leisure. Huge number of assets added, 40 in Spain alone, I think. Start of this year, Grupo Pinheiro, JV, which brought 22 all-inclusive assets into the brand family. So you've made a big leap into leisure. What was the strategic rationale for that move?
Well, I think you really identified it as part of the question, is Hyatt's kind of reputation and portfolio was always very much geared towards urban and business brands. And so one of the key strategic things that we wanted to change was to actually move our portfolio much more into resort and also leisure, the two things being slightly different because you can also have urban leisure, and really create a much more unified network effect across the whole portfolio, and then servicing our guests through their different intentions of stay. And we actually had a resort brand called Hyatt Ziva and its sister brand called Hyatt Zilara from 2013. That was the Playa connection. And, you know, I tinkered with bringing those into Europe kind of pre-pandemic. And I couldn't get my head around the whole tour operator piece and how that distribution would work. And so obviously when we had the opportunity to acquire Apple Leisure Group, nothing to do with me personally, I would hasten to add, I'm not taking any credit for that, is what we've been able to do is bring expertise inside of Hyatt. So every time we acquire a new business, the opportunity is to acquire expertise with it. And that allows us to grapple with the different distribution strategies, segmentation, etc.
That's quite an interesting point in terms of viewing the type. Obviously, the segments are different. What are the sort of biggest differences that you would say owners, investors should be aware of operating a resort-based inventory as against a business hotel?
I mean, obviously, the distribution is very different, and the role of the tour operator, I'm still getting my head around that, but the tour operator agreements are critical. One of the most important things with the tour operator agreements is to have a portfolio spread of properties in the locations they want to go to. And certainly we're able to leverage our tour operator agreements because we have great inventory in the Caribbean. And sometimes we can then say, we will open up this destination or property to you if you're able to include these hotels here for us. So having a good spread really helps with those tour operator agreements. I think, I mean, the obvious one is seasonality. I think our Palma office opens and closes something like 45 hotels annually, and the ongoing challenge with employment that comes with those seasonal hotels. I think one of the benefits that we've been able to bring to some of these resorts as well is because we have a very strong group sales team and an established group sales force that have been filling our urban hotels for so long. They're actually helping create shoulder season opportunities for some of our resort properties as well.
And one of the leisure markets you've invested in, as I've alluded to, is Spain, very heavily. There have been concerns, we've all read about over-tourism concerns in the press, Spain being a particular focus of that. How at Hyatt do you approach the concept of over-tourism in your development decisions?
I think the over-tourism point is a really tough one. you know, you could look to Barcelona and say that hotels aren't really part of the problem, because the first city that I'm aware of that had a widespread moratorium, and actually a very well enforced moratorium on hotels, even down to hotels adding additional rooms, was Barcelona. And yet it's one of the cities that's really struggled with over-tourism. So I think as we see the crackdown on the short stay holiday lets, that will really help these cities come to grips with what's going on. You know, it's not, we're part of the equation as well, so it's not in our interest to have a situation whereby people don't want to go to destinations, so we need to be really careful about that. And we also need to be mindful that in a lot of these resort locations, we have employees who need to be housed, and often seasonally. So, you know, it's really treading carefully, understanding the destination, and being responsible.
Let's look at the business part of the business, if you like, for a minute. How's the business doing, and what are the opportunities and challenges you see in the business and I guess corporate travel market in the next few years?
So we're really seeing the corporate sector bounce back. And as we've seen that bounce back come, we're really seeing a push forward for people who want to run conferences, events, MICE, with a twist. So one of the trends that we're seeing now is when we get requests, the conference organizer wants to attach some form of leisure event, much more than they did pre-pandemic. Requests for people to be able to stay longer, perhaps create their own leisure, I hate that phrase, event out of and tag on to a conference. So we're certainly seeing that piece of the market coming back very strongly. I do think it is quite market specific. And this morning I was on a call we were talking about our European results, and one of the things we're now experiencing in Germany, we've got a number of events where we're starting to see US governmental business pulling back or pulling out, and some of the fair business in Germany doesn't look so strong with what's going on in the economy there. So I don't think it's universal, but I do think as a group, if I talk to our sales teams, they really do see demand for the hotels that we have with good conferencing space.
Okay. I did promise the chance to ask some questions, so I'll just pause at this point and see if anybody had a question they wanted to ask. Felicity? You've answered everything so far. Just behind you, Andrew.
Yeah. To what degree, with your growth in resorts, are you over-dependent on tour operations? Is it something you're trying to diversify, or perhaps the reverse, you're trying to build more?
So one of the things that I learned very quickly when we went into this space is that all-inclusive doesn't mean to say that every single room in that hotel is sold on an all-inclusive basis. So what I've learned about this and what we're doing is really the strategy is around mixing up those board bases to make sure you get the optimal revenue mix for that hotel in that destination. We're certainly still very reliant on the tour operators, but as I said before, what we want to do is go to the tour operators with a strong proposition, which is we've got great destinations you want to go to, which makes them more reliant on us because of the network effect that we're able to offer them, as opposed to maybe having an individual hotel going to a tour operator where you perhaps the balance of the negotiation isn't so strong.
Okay, I'll give you another final chance if I have time. It's a useful segue because I wanted to look at the approach Hyatt has taken to growth over recent years. It's obviously grown hugely, and there have been a number of statement transactions that have helped you get there. We've talked about Apple, we've mentioned Playa, there was Grupo Pinheiro, collaboration with Lindner. Lindner was interesting, and Standard International lifestyle assets. I wondered what was the motivation behind the Me and All brand acquisition?
I think we had a clear strategy that we wanted to create a much more balanced portfolio to really make sure we had this network effect across the portfolio. And so when we first started conversations with Linda, Me and All was a brand that we really admired what they'd done with. It's sitting within upper mid-scale to upscale. It's got a very competitive FF&E and OSE budget per room. In the European markets, particularly where we have the third-party white label operators taking leases, this is a model that can provide them with a very competitive branding option. And it wasn't something that we already had in our stable. So we very much liked that brand, and we brought it on board, I think about a year ago now. We've just opened the first one outside of Germany in Flims in Switzerland, a ski destination. And I think we've got something close to 1,000 rooms in various stages of negotiation now. So I think Me and All fits really nicely into where we're going with our lifestyle division, albeit entry level as opposed to upper upscale or luxury.
Yeah. And those sorts of large collaborations and deal acquisitions, do you see that route to growth continuing, or will you be more organic in terms of growth going forward, or a mixture?
Yeah, I think right now as an organisation we probably just need to
take a breath.
It's been quite frantic, and when we make these acquisitions, we have to learn from the company that we're acquiring, and also they have to learn from us. And integration is a really important part of making this work. Apple Leisure Group has taken us quite a long time to integrate because their business model was so different to ours. And we're just now, and their IT systems were different, so we're just now coming through a stage with Apple Leisure Group where I would say we're firmly at integration being completed stage, and obviously we're now going through that with Standard. I think with Standard, what it's done for us is really firmly put us on the map with lifestyle. I didn't know about the deal, so it was extremely exciting when we were finally told what was going on. That's prompted us to create a lifestyle division. We've moved all of our lifestyle brands into that division, and it allows us then to bring a new focus to not only how we work with our owners to concept the hotels in the first instance, but also how we are going to operate them, and importantly make sure the food and beverage piece is properly activated and fulfilling expectations.
Lots of work to do. Last chance for any questions. Yep.
Looking at wider travel into Europe, my impression is that Middle East and American leisure travel is back in full, but it's been a way behind for Asian travellers to come back. Is that your impression? And are you seeing any signs of Indian travellers coming in? So that's been talked about as a big volume driver in future years into Europe.
Yeah, so without doubt, and for instance, if I look at London as an example, our RevPAR growth in London has been fueled by Americans and Middle East, particularly the Americans, and obviously then further afield. We're starting to see more of the Asian travellers coming through. It's still not at the levels we had predicted post-pandemic. That's had a big impact. China is starting to get stronger, and the prediction that the Chinese mobilization of the Chinese middle class, which we all talked about pre-pandemic, is finally going to start to come. But we're not seeing that much evidence of it yet. But it's small shoots.
One over there, Andrew.
Bear with me.
You'll get your steps in today.
Thanks, Andrew. Felicity, obviously lots of acquisitions and all-inclusive on the other side of the pond. I guess at this point, the main all-inclusive operators in Europe are in Spain and Portugal and Greece, and they're going to be very expensive right now. But when the cycle matures a bit, is Hyatt looking for a bit more over here? If you can say. Or much more interestingly, if you can't say.
What, in terms of M&A activity?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Hyatt, I think Hyatt is not closed to M&A activity. I think, as we just said a moment ago, you know, as an organisation, I think we are having a moment to breathe. There's been a lot of activity going on, but we're very opportunistic, and we've proven to be opportunistic with the acquisitions we've made. And if something were to come up in Europe, no, that's not something that we are going to turn our backs to.
Great. Okay, well, I mean, perfectly on time.
I'm just going
Unless
to
you
ask a
wanted
quick
one.
question as a segue into the next session. Felicity, lifestyle hotels, what do you understand by that term?
I did an entire panel on this for Simon a few weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, lifestyle's interesting phraseology, because actually if you ask the average person on the street what lifestyle hotel is, they'll look at you blankly and not know what the hell you're talking about. So I think within Hyatt, the way we've categorized lifestyle is a hotel where it would provide a level of activation in the food and beverage area, that's very focused on design, design being fresh, new, perhaps in the case of standard, slightly more challenging than what the guest would expect. But I think as once the product is there, then very much that focus on food, beverage, and making sure that there's life injected into the hotel and a level of activation. But you could ask me the same question tomorrow and I'd come up with a slightly different answer, because it's...
But that was nice.
Like
It was
jelly.
life and style, which I thought
Yeah.
was very good. Always great to get your views. Thank you very much. Everyone, Felicity Black-Roberts.